Now we will hear from Mr. Takafumi Kawahara from Toyama Minami Senior High School. The title of his speech is Deadly Silence, the Media and Teenage Suicide. Let us welcome Mr. Kawahara.
I'd rather die than keep getting beaten up. Do you know where that sentence came from? It's from a note written by a boy who committed suicide. He was only a few years younger than me. These days, I often hear or read about such stories on TV and in the newspaper. At first, I couldn't understand why so many young people chose to kill themselves. To me, such a thing was absolutely unthinkable. But is it really so unimaginable? Generally, when we hear about suicide, the first thing that comes to mind is the individual affected, the individual situation, the individual's decision, and the consequences. However, I think it is necessary for us to strongly consider the role that the media plays, not only in our awareness of suicide as a social problem, but also in an increasing rate of teen suicide. In my research, I learned that Japan has the highest rate of suicide of any economically developed country in the world. Actually, suicide is the #1 cause of teenage death in Japan, and the second leading cause of teenage death in the world. These rates have increased year after year. Can you believe this? It is a serious problem, and we need to be aware of it. In order to find out more about this problem, I visited Professor Nobita of the Human Development Department at the University of Toyama. In talking with him, I learned that many of us may not be aware of what we can do for young people who are thinking about or have been affected by suicide. In my opinion, this is partially the fault of the media. I think that the media tends to focus on the act of suicide itself and its effects on society, but not on information that can help us understand the problem or what we can do to help people who are thinking about taking their own lives. We all know that teenage suicide is a problem. What we aren't being told is what to do or who to call if we or young people around us are struggling with ideas of suicide. How many of you know that there are many organizations, like prefectural health centers and suicide hotlines for teenagers, whose sole purpose is to help people who are thinking about committing suicide? They are rarely advertised. We need to know how to recognize suicidal behavior, know who to call if we see it, and realize that we are responsible for taking action to prevent it. The government and the media need to work together to bring this information to our attention. Change will come with support from the media. Austria is a good example of this. In 1984, the number of Austrian people who committed suicide by jumping in front of subway trains was alarmingly high. The Austrian media often sensationalized such cases, going into great detail in their reports. This did more harm than good, because such reports romanticized suicide or served as an instruction manual for those who wish to commit suicide. So, the Austrian government set guidelines for how much detail the media could share when reporting about cases involving suicide. By 1987, the number of suicide cases dropped dramatically. In this way, greater support from the media, namely in how suicide cases were presented to the public, helped improve the situation in Austria. I think that Japan's media can make that kind of change here. However, such improvements will not occur overnight. So it is important that the Japanese media get started as soon as possible. The popularity of suicide as a solution to life's problems is a dangerous trend among people my age. It is likely that suicide will affect our lives someday, if it hasn't already. However, the media is everywhere in today's society. We can use the media's influence to spread the word that suicide is not a solution, and there are people and organizations available to help. Change is possible, but it is our responsibility to demand information from the media. Teenagers, like me, are in need of guidance and protection, and the first step toward that goal is information. We can't afford any more silence on the matter. Thank you.